and I'm going to share with you in total honesty what's gone wrong with this car. Hello guys, and welcome to this Volks Wizard video. Now in today's video I'm going to tell you what it's been like living with my Mk8 GTI Clubsport, which I bought brand new on the 1st of March this year from Mk8 Volkswagen in Cheltenham. That was about 2.5 months ago, and in that time I've done just over 2,500 miles in it. I've commuted in it every day. I've been to the tip fully laden with it. I've even been on holiday in it. So it's probably a good time now to share with you the highs and lows of owning the fastest non-limited production Golf GTI. As you can probably tell, it's not all been plain sailing, and I'm going to share with you in total honesty what's gone wrong with this car and what I don't like about it. Once we've done that, I'm going to talk about the modifications I've made to the car so I can enjoy it even more. And once we've done that, I'm going to talk about my future plans for it. But let's start off on a positive note and talk about the good things about my Golf GTI Clubsport. Okay, well, there's a lot to like about this car, but let's start off with some practical bits and pieces. So it's very well screwed together, I've got to tell you. We're on a bumpy road, we've got firm suspension, we've got big wheels, and there isn't one squeak or rattle to be heard in this cabin. It's incredible. There's been a lot of talk about build quality. Well, okay, some of the materials are a little bit cheap here and there, but when it comes to build quality, it's hard to fault. It's proper Volkswagen in that respect. Probably one of the best Volkswagens I've ever had when it comes to build quality. Way better than my Mark 7.5 GTI TCR was. Now let's talk about MPG. I know it's a performance car, but you're probably going to buy it on finance, so you don't want to be spending too much on fuel and having to make the repayments. Now when I got it, it was going into the high 30s, but that was during running in when I was driving it quite sedately. Now it's run in, it still does over 35 easily, even on my motorway commute, which is a relatively high speed, not the car's most efficient time, and it will top 40 if I take it quite easy, which is pretty incredible for a car that does 0 to 60 in about 5 seconds, according to Joe Achilles' V-Box. That's quicker than a manual Golf R. And then we have the chassis. But honestly, I love the way this car goes around corners. It's just so incredible. I can't wait to get it on track. Ooh, it's just so precise, even in the wet now. Yeah, I've got to drive a car with DCC because I do wonder if the fact you've got a bit of comfort there when you want it takes away from this car's precision. They've done a great job with these dampers though. You're not really being shortchanged. But if DCC cars are as good as this, then yeah, buy it. And then we have the engine. Well, it's an interesting power plant, this. Okay, it's an evolution of the EA888s we've had before. It's the Evo 4 version. In this car it produces 300 horsepower, 400 newton meters of torque, and that's not particularly different to that in the TCR, but for some reason it feels a lot quicker, and I think the 0 to 60 time is a bit of a clue, because that is pretty incredible for a front wheel drive car. That's you know, 4-wheel drive Golf territory, and I'm pretty sure now I've got to know this car that it's probably overperforming a bit like the Golf R is. So people generally reckon they're 340 to 350. This, I reckon, is possibly around the 330 mark. When I drove the Golf R, I realised I did actually floor that car a lot. I don't know whether that was because it was a press car or what, or whether it was a little bit softer or a bit more secure in the corners, that I actually indulged in the performance a bit more than I have with this car. But now I've got to know this car a bit more. I'll just overtake this learner because we're going to have to open her up in a bit. Now I've got to know it a bit more. This car is seriously potent, and it seems to be above 4,000 RPM, where it just goes a bit crazy. It reminds me of the old 16 valves, but they had like a torque deficit down below. This car's oozing with torque, but it's got this top end kick as well, which is just so addictive. So let me demonstrate. We're in 5th now. Let's drop down to 3rd, and the road straightens out a bit now, so we'll probably need 4th now. So let's foot down, and then just there, it's just crazy. It's a real thrill. I've got shivers down my spine. It's just such a buzz, especially when you think about the fact you haven't got four-wheel drive. You know, it's just yeah, it's just the two front tyres doing all the work. The road's a bit greasy. It's exciting, and I think it really needs to go on track. That doesn't mean it's no good on road. It's an amazing road car. So yeah, it's easily the best Golf GTI I've ever owned or driven. Okay, now let's talk about the bad points. You can categorise these in two different ways. There are things that have gone wrong that shouldn't be doing what they're doing, that are really annoying, and there are things that are annoying, but that's just the way they are, and they were like that when I bought the car, and I knew they would be like that. So let's start off then with the malfunctions. Now, I've not had to take this car back to the dealer for anything, so let's put all this into perspective. But I don't think I should be driving a brand new Volkswagen out of a dealership and have the parking sensors faulty, which is exactly what happened. If you watch the collection video, when I'm leaving the premises at Mk8 Volkswagen Cheltenham, there are quite a few bongs and yellow writing on the dashboard, and that's the parking sensors saying they're not working. This has been ongoing during my ownership. I believe a software update will sort it. It's never been too much of an issue because next time you start the car, they're working perfectly well. It is annoying for two reasons. Firstly, if you park into a tight space using the parking sensors, you come back to the car and they decide they're not working, it's really hard to get out of that space you've got yourself into. And also, if you bought a car with parking sensors, you tend to get used to them, and whatever the dashboard's bonging, because it does bong about a lot of things, you don't tend to remember that they're not working, even though you've been told. So there is a high risk you will drive into something if they suddenly decide to stop. So yeah, that's probably my biggest annoyance, and it does sort of happen once or twice a week. I had an Octavia VRS on loan just after I bought this car. It did the same thing. It did the bit where I parked in a tight parking space. It's a big car, the Octavia, and it was a struggle to get out of it without the sensors working. So yeah, maybe software update will resolve that, but I don't think I should be driving a new car out of a Volkswagen dealership with this problem. Next up, we have creaking from the shock absorbers or the top mounts. I'm not sure what it is. It could be lower wishbones as well. But for the first minute or so of driving, the car will probably no more than once creak from the front end. It goes something like that. And yeah, it's weird. And again, it's not that unusual. It happens a few times a week. Not sure if it's temperature related or what, but you know, when this car's been developed and tested, I'm surprised faults like this are coming into the customer cars, to be honest, because they're not exactly that hard to replicate. But to be honest, it doesn't really annoy me because it's so intermittent. So once it's done it, it'll never do it again. Really annoying was when the mode button stopped working. So it's not a Golf R, it doesn't have a mode button on the steering wheel. You have to do it with the button on the dash. When the car was a month old, it just was dead. They don't click or anything, so you don't know what they're doing, but you just pressed it and you couldn't believe it wasn't doing the modes. The fix for that wasn't to turn the ignition on and off, because that didn't fix it, but I left it overnight, came back to it next day, and it worked fine for a month. Then when the car was 2 months old, it did it again. This was a good one, yeah. I was away a few weeks ago and we were staying in a holiday cottage where the fire alarm went off in error. We got the owner around and he said he was really sorry, and he lived next door, so he was going to listen out for it if it happened again and come round and sort it out. That afternoon, the car alarm went off for no reason. I pressed unlock, it wouldn't turn it off. I started the engine and it was still on, really loud as well. The only way to turn it off was to lock the car, which isn't really intuitive, and then that stopped it once you unlocked it. Yeah, anyway, in the meantime, the owner, who lived a couple of 100 yards down the road, had heard the alarm going off and ran straight into our property and was going, and then he kind of realised that it wasn't the house alarm, it was the car. So yeah, that was a bit embarrassing. The other thing is the Volkswagen Wii Connect app. It's a brilliant, brilliant app, but it's based on technology that's probably not completely robust. For a start, the car has to be in a 4G zone or some sort of mobile data zone to be able to connect. So quite a lot of time it doesn't work. When I got the car, I spent ages following some advice on a forum that said, delete your user and try again, because you have to become the primary user. That was the problem. It wouldn't let me, and there was this thing where you deleted it and tried again and again and again, hoped that it would connect to the servers and let you become the primary user. There's a picture of a globe, top right of the dashboard. That should be white, not grey. If it's grey, it's saying that it's not connected. Then the advice was to go into privacy settings to make sure that you're giving out your location, but the settings weren't there. you weren't allowed to get into them. Anyway, I spent about a week getting very frustrated with it, sitting in the car like at night and stuff, just trying to get connected. And then suddenly it said, we've got a software update, do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah. And then, well, it won't do it while you're driving, which is a bit annoying. But once I'd left it, it did it. And after that, it's worked okay until I went away and it stopped connecting. But it could have been a lack of signal. But yeah, that's just a little frustration. But generally, the car's been really good. Now, under the category of annoyances, there are a couple of things. Now, firstly, this car's on its third windscreen. It's 2.5 months old. So the original one lasted about 3 weeks. I was unlucky. I've driven up and down the motorway to commute now for 18 months. I've never really had a stone impact on anything as far as I remember. I got one on this. It was low down on the windscreen, sort of by the driver's side wiper blade. So not even in the zone. I thought I could live with it, but no, it cracked. So I took about a month to sort out a replacement. So it was sort of mid-April, I was just about to go away and I wanted a genuine part. I didn't have to use auto glass or auto windscreen. Thank God I found a good windscreen installer called Clearview Windscreens in Redditch down the road. They do Ferraris and all sorts. They understand I wanted a genuine part. It took them a couple of weeks to get it. Unfortunately, they didn't realise it was scratched until they'd fitted it. I was going away the next day. It was going to take days to get another one. So 8 days later, when I came back from a holiday, they took out the second windscreen and put another one in. Now, the original brand was not anything I'd heard of. It wasn't Security Sangermain or Pilkington. It was something else, and that was the replacement one was the same, which I was a bit disappointed about because it hadn't really lasted very well. This one's Pilkington, genuine Volkswagen as well. So hopefully it might be a bit more durable. But I have a horrible suspicion that screens now are not as thick as they used to be, and they're much more prone to cracking than they used to be, because you used to get a stone chip. You didn't used to get a crack. You used to get a chip and you could live with a chip, have it repaired. But now they seem to go to cracks a bit more readily, and you could think it's saving money. But I spoke to the windscreen guys and they reckon it's because of all this technology in the windscreen. So you've got sensors there, which are probably not that big a deal. That's light and rain sensor, I think. But this camera here works better when the screen's thinner. So yeah, not ideal. And guess how much this was to replace? £550 was the invoice price. Thankfully, I'm only paying a fraction of that thanks to my insurance company. But yeah, that wasn't good. Another little annoyance, particularly because I've just driven this for a few days to test it, is the interior. So it's generally pretty good, but I really don't like the door cards, and I just hope there's some way of making them look a bit better. They're okay with the ambient lighting, I guess, because you get a colour under there, but I mean, that's so boring. Let me show you what it was like in the original Clubsport. So this is a Mark 7 Clubsport. Actually not that different in price these days. But look at that, you get a red stitching, you get Alcantara, you can even put stripes in it, and I think you may or may not get ambient lighting, I can't remember, but it doesn't need ambient lighting. That just looks lovely, and that's one thing the Golf R, in fact, it's one thing the R-Line's got that the GTI hasn't got. So yeah, maybe I'll have to try and look out for some R-Line door cards. The other thing is the carpets are pretty cheap and nasty in here, so they're definitely a step down over the ones in the Mark 7. But to be honest, you don't really notice that, and it does drive ever so well, so you can forgive a lot of things. Now let's talk about the modifications I've made to my car. Now, the most obvious one are the wheels. These were fitted when the car was a month old, done 1,000 miles. They're Vossen HF2s. I think they're 8.5 by 19s. They're ET45. The car originally came on the 18-inch Richmond wheels, which I don't really know what to say about those. Whoever chose those for this car either wanted people to upgrade or was just a bit crazy, but yeah. So I think generally they've gone down pretty well on social media, and I love them. And you really have to compare what it looked like before to how it does now to fully appreciate them, because not only do we have a better style that's more in keeping with what you expect of a GTI, but the stance of the car is better as well because they're that little bit wider. The one thing I do miss is that the car originally came on, and this was sheer luck because you can have Bridgestones, it came on Goodyear F1 Super Sport tyres, which are a bit like Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's. So they're a bit track biased, and they were amazing. Even on the 18s, even the narrower 225s, that car was yeah, hard to fault really. So when I got the Vosens, I went down one notch on the Goodyear catalogue to asymmetric 5s, Goodyear Eagle F1 asymmetric 5s, primarily because I'm not going to take this car on track on its road tyres, so there's no point having a track bias tyre. I wanted a tyre that was very good in wet conditions because I do a lot of motorway driving, and yeah, when you come into a torrential downpour on a motorway, you don't really want to have to stop or slow down too much because you're more likely to get hit by somebody. So for me, having a tyre that displaces water well was more important. That's why I went for this. But yeah, if I take it on track, I'm going to be fitting it with the T-Roc R Pretorias that I've still got, and I'm going to be fitting Goodyear Eagle F1 Supersport R, which is Goodyear's equivalent of the Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tyres. So it's road legal, but it doesn't like standing water, but it'd be amazing on the track. So yeah, hopefully track shortly, some point in the summer. Yep. When I fitted the wheels, not long after that, I got these wheel arch extenders from VW main dealer, about £15 each. They're what you get on a Mark 8 if it's fitted with 19s from the factory. And bearing in mind the factory 19s are half an inch further in, so they're even more necessary on this car because the wheels stick out a bit more. You can see that this tyre is a bit of a stretch on this rim. It just about protects the rim a bit, this protecting edge, but it is a stretch. And I did get a chip on this wheel that really annoyed me because I haven't curbed them, but there was something I had to touch in. Actually, it's just there. Yeah, there's a little bit of aluminium, just a little flick up. God knows what that was. So they are a bit vulnerable, but I think I drove it around Suffolk on those country roads a couple of weeks ago and managed to not damage them again, but that's just a freak mishap. But yeah, I love them. What else? Right, inside then, you probably saw on that other shot just now that I've changed the mats. Sorry, they're dirty. Originally they were black and they had a little red edge. This red edge is a bit bolder, and you've got a silver thread as well which matches the body. These are some sort of Mark 7 mats and they do fit perfectly in Mark 8, so yeah, you can change them. Just wanted to put a bit more colour on the floor there just to liven it up a bit. If only I could do the same with this bit. And then finally we have the paddles. So I fitted these a couple of weeks ago. You might have seen the DIY video. They're genuine Volkswagen Mark 8 Golf R paddles. You cannot fit them through some sort of tricky way around the back here. You have to dismantle the steering wheel, but it was well worth the effort, I can tell you. They're only plastic. Yeah, they're only flimsy, but they're so much better than the other ones. And they've got this ridge just here where your fingers sit, which is nice. And even when you're not changing gear, your fingers kind of rest there. And they're pretty cool. And they look better as well. Just looks a lot more interesting and helps the car stand out from the base model. Even the Edition 45 doesn't get these. So yeah, this car now is massively more appealing than the Edition 45, which brings me on to future plans for this car. So not long after I committed to buy it, the Edition 45 was announced. Normally I'd have been a bit miffed about that. Why I'm not miffed is because I think it's one of the first edition cars, I think it's probably since the Mark III, that hasn't got more power than the normal model. So it's just the same mechanically as the Clubsport. So nothing gained, you get the Akrapovic, but to be perfectly honest, this car makes enough noise from the exhaust. It's got enough character. It does not need an Akrapovic. So whilst you might think I'm saying this as sour grapes, I'm not too bothered about Edition 45. I'm sure I'll own one day. I've just seen a video with Benny Leuchter, the guy who set the Nürburgring ring record, who went through every generation of GTI. Yeah, I just really don't like the wheels one bit. I like a car to be stealthy and fast, and that hits the right spot. So future plans then, not an Edition 45, definitely not a Golf R. So yeah, there's nothing on the horizon that will replace this car. I've got a 4-year PCP, so I'd be very surprised if it stays with me that long, but so far it's doing really well. One thing I might be tempted by is a Clubsport I can spec to my own tastes. I do need to drive one with DCC though, just to see if it still feels as good to drive as this, because there might be something different about the setup that means it doesn't have the magic this car's got over the R and over the older Mark 7s. As it is firm, but it never really annoys me, and the way it drives just makes up for the ride. So yeah, that's it. I do want to take it on track, as I said before, and it'd be really nice if anybody's got a Golf R and they want to go on track and we can compare the two cars, and let me know. Somewhere like Bedford, Donington, even Silverstone, if you want, let's meet up, let's do a nice video. I want to go to Europe in the car. That's looking like September at the earliest, because Germany and Austria are still all shut down with COVID. So I should have my second jab by June, which might mean I can go where I want, but the countries have to want us to go there. So let's see what happens with that. But yeah, it's just a nice car to drive every day, just normally. Sometimes I've not really been in the mood to hammer it, and I just put it into efficiency mode and just cruised in it, and yeah, it's a really good all-rounder. I was worried it would lose some of that Golf breadth of ability, but no, not even with passive dampers and 19s, it's still pretty damn good. Okay guys, well, I hope you've enjoyed this Volks Wizard video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, please do comment, please do share it, and please do subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video, which should be a review, or almost like a, I don't know, I used to own one. I've done reviews on the Mk8 GTI Clubsport S. I'm getting one tomorrow, and I just want to, yeah, drive it and share that with you, because that's such a special car. So yeah, look out for that, and yeah, see you for that one really soon, guys.